You were never blocked. You were just tuned to a frequency that didn't match the reality you were trying to reach. And no amount of hustle, no amount of strategy, no perfectly worded affirmation could override that energetic mismatch. Because reality doesn't respond to effort. It responds to resonance. What if effort is the enemy of manifestation? What if everything you've been taught, to try harder, to visualize more, to control the outcome, has only pulled you further from the door you were trying to open? What if the universe was never asking you to do more, but to become more attuned? You're about to discover something few people ever realize. There is a frequency that opens doors before you even knock. Not metaphorically, not philosophically, but tangibly, neurologically, energetically. A measurable shift in vibration that transforms you from a seeker into a receiver. From someone chasing results to someone effortlessly aligned with them. There was a time when I tried everything. The books, the rituals, the morning routines, the late-night visualizations. The constant striving to raise my vibration and manifest my desires. I burned through notebooks of affirmations. I exhausted myself with techniques, and yet nothing moved, until I discovered a single shift, not in action but in vibration, not in what I was doing but in who I was being. I stopped chasing what I wanted and started tuning into the frequency of already having it. I stopped knocking on doors and became the signal that made them open on their own. That's when everything changed. This isn't a lesson in magic thinking. It's an exploration into how energy, emotion, identity, and consciousness interact with the quantum field to shape your reality. It's the science of resonance meeting the wisdom of surrender. It's how neural circuits, emotional states, and spiritual awareness combine into a single broadcast that either attracts miracles or repels them. In this journey, you'll learn why some people seem to walk through life with doors opening before them, while others remain stuck, despite trying everything. You'll understand how to raise your emotional frequency without effort, how to shift your identity into one of magnetic receptivity, and how to finally stop asking for what you want and start receiving it. This is about becoming the version of yourself who lives in the timeline where what you want is already happening. Not through force, but through frequency, the hidden door. Why effort fails when frequency is off. We've been taught to move the world through will. That if you want something bad enough and try hard enough, eventually life will surrender to your persistence. This belief is embedded deep into our nervous system. That results come to those who chase them, that reality is something to be dominated. But there's something dangerously deceptive about that belief, because even though effort can create movement, it doesn't guarantee direction. You can push a door with all your strength, but if it opens inward, all your force becomes friction. And that's exactly what happens when your energy isn't aligned with what you're trying to call in. You create resistance, not access. Struggle, not flow. Distance, not proximity. Effort is not the enemy. But effort without frequency is a locked system. It's a mind trying to force what only the heart can receive. It's a body running forward while the soul is still frozen. It's intention without resonance. And manifestation doesn't respond to intention alone. It responds to vibration. Your efforts become invisible to the field when the signal you're sending contradicts what you say you desire. That's why people burn out in the name of manifestation. They keep trying harder, visualizing more, scripting with urgency, saying all the right things, yet underneath their core frequency is still coded in lack, in fear, in doubt, in shame. And the quantum field doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your being. Reality mirrors your energetic signature, not your effort. That's why two people can take the same action. One receives miracles, the other receives silence. One is tuned, the other is forcing. And the difference isn't in their plan. It's in their frequency. If you walk into a locked room and scream affirmations, the door will still remain closed. Because doors don't open through noise. They open through codes. The code is vibration, and until your energy broadcasts the key, no amount of mental strategy will bypass the lock. This is the hidden door most people miss. The space where things begin to move not because you push, but because you match. The truth is, the version of your life that you're trying to manifest already exists. Not in your imagination, but in the quantum field. And that version is vibrating at a frequency that corresponds with peace, trust, embodiment, and presence. If your frequency is running on urgency, anxiety, frustration, or control, You've automatically tuned out of the station where that life is playing. You're trying to hear music that's not on your dial. You're screaming across frequencies hoping something will answer. And when nothing does, you assume you need to try harder. But in truth, you need to stop. Stop forcing. Start tuning. People think alignment is passive. That surrender means you're giving up. But alignment isn't inaction. It's precise action. It's intelligent resonance. It's when the current version of you vibrates in coherence with the version of you that already has what you desire. That's when the door opens. That's when the field reorganizes. That's when reality stops resisting and starts responding. If you've been struggling to manifest, this is why. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because your dream is too big. It's not because the universe is testing you, or because you need more tools. It's because your frequency hasn't yet become compatible with the outcome you seek. You're trying to bring in a reality that's not listening to your voice. It's listening to your vibration. And when the vibration says, I need, I lack, I'm afraid, that reality doesn't recognize you as its match. It's not rejection, it's misalignment. The most dangerous trap is believing that more effort will solve a vibrational misalignment. That if you just push more, you'll get there. But effort doesn't override energy. In fact, excessive effort often reveals misalignment. It tells you, my body doesn't feel safe to receive this. My nervous system doesn't believe this is possible. My identity is still rooted in proving, not embodying. And the quantum field listens to that language louder than anything else. There is an energetic posture that opens doors. It doesn't come from tension. It comes from relaxation into receptivity, from the soft power of certainty, from the stillness of knowing. When your body stops bracing, when your breath slows, when your thoughts no longer try to manipulate the outcome, something profound happens. You become magnetically receptive. You begin to broadcast a signal that says, I already am. I already have. I already know. And that signal is irresistible to reality because it reflects the truth of creation, that all is already done and manifestation is just the art of tuning in. The field doesn't need your panic. It needs your precision. The door doesn't need your force. It needs your frequency. This is why certain people move through life with grace, not because they have less challenge, but because their internal state is aligned with what they desire before it arrives. They walk as if it's already theirs, and that certainty opens doors, not because the world owes it to them, but because they've stopped blocking what's already trying to reach them. When you stop trying to earn the outcome and start embodying the energy of someone who has already received it, the rules change. You stop chasing, you start attracting, you stop controlling, you start allowing, you stop knocking, and the door opens. The physics of possibility, how vibration organizes reality. Every outcome you've ever imagined exists. Not in a future you need to reach, but in a field that already contains it, the field of infinite possibility. The mistake is believing that life unfolds linearly, that you move from point A to point B through time and effort. But that's not how reality works at its most fundamental level. According to quantum physics, there isn't a single fixed future. There is a spectrum of potentials. All of them exist, and your vibration is what determines which version of reality collapses into experience. This isn't a metaphor, it's physics. At the quantum level, particles don't exist as things. They exist as probabilities. They are waves of information and potential. And only when an observer's attention collapses the wave into a specific point does it become real. That's what your consciousness is doing. It's collapsing the infinite into the visible. It's selecting from the menu of existence what you'll experience as real. And what makes that selection is not your thoughts, your affirmations, or your wish list. It's your frequency, the sum total of your emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual state in this very moment. David Bohm, one of the pioneers of quantum theory, proposed that reality is structured like a hologram, that the external world we see is just the unfolded projection of a deeper, unseen order, the implicate order, where everything is connected and encoded. In this framework, the vibration of your consciousness doesn't just influence what you see, it shapes what's allowed to unfold in front of you. The outer is the echo of the inner. The seen is the mirror of the unseen. Carl Pribram, a neurophysiologist, came to a similar conclusion from a different angle. He discovered that the brain processes information not just through electrical signals, but through frequency-based interference patterns, the same mechanics that govern holograms. In other words, your brain doesn't just store data. It interprets reality through vibration. What you call reality is your nervous system decoding a vibrational field and turning it into form. This is why two people can walk through the same world and live in completely different realities. One sees possibility, the other sees limitation. One finds open doors, the other walks past them. They're not responding to the world, they're responding to their interpretation of the field. And that interpretation is frequency-based. Joe Dispenza refers to this as the signature of the field. Every thought, every emotion, every belief carries a frequency. And that frequency broadcasts a signal that the quantum field reflects back as form. You are not experiencing reality directly. You are experiencing a mirror of the signal you're sending. This is why consciousness is not a passenger in your life. It is the architect of your life. The building blocks aren't matter. They're vibration. When your frequency is tuned to guilt, shame, fear, or self-doubt, the field reflects experiences that confirm those states. Not because you deserve them, but because resonance organizes reality. You attract what you're in coherence with. You collapse the version of the world that matches who you're being, not what you want. This is the physics of manifestation. It's not belief that makes it work. It's embodiment. Think of your body as a tuning fork. When you hold an emotion long enough, your cells begin to vibrate at that emotional frequency. Your nervous system calibrates around it. Your posture, your breath, your tone, your expectations, all of it starts broadcasting a signal. And the quantum field, like a mirror with no opinion, no agenda, no morality, simply reflects that signal back. But here's where it gets extraordinary. Because just as your vibration selects reality, it can also reorganize it. When you shift your emotional frequency, even subtly, you don't just change how you feel. You change what's possible. Possibility isn't fixed. It's fluid. It bends to your being. When you elevate your frequency, the universe reorganizes around you in real time. People call this synchronicity, coincidence, luck, but it's not random. It's resonance. The question is not, how do I make my dreams come true? The real question is, what version of me is already living them? And how do I become that frequency now? You don't wait for reality to change before you shift your energy. You shift your energy and reality begins to rearrange. The field is always listening, always responding. Not to your desperation, not to your longing, but to your alignment. This is why presence is so powerful. Because presence is the only state where full alignment is possible. When you're fully here, you stop resisting what is, and resistance is what creates incoherence in your frequency. Incoherence is static. It disrupts the signal. And without a clear signal, the field can't respond clearly. The door you're trying to open can't recognize you, but when your inner world becomes coherent, when your heart, your mind, your body, and your soul vibrate in unison, the signal becomes undeniable. That's when you stop chasing miracles and start living in a reality where they happen naturally. You don't need to manipulate matter to make things happen. You need to master energy. When your energy shifts, the world follows. Not immediately, not predictably, but inevitably. Because the physics of possibility always honors the vibration that holds the greatest coherence. You're not here to beg reality for what you want. You're here to remember that reality was always waiting for you to become the version of yourself that matches what you've been asking for. And when that happens, when you tune your signal just right, the field stops resisting. It begins to respond, and the impossible becomes visible. The inner frequency scale. Emotions that open or block access. If vibration is the key that opens doors, then emotion is the hand that turns the dial. Every emotional state you inhabit, whether fleeting or chronic, broadcasts a frequency into the field, not a symbolic frequency, a measurable one. And that signal, once released, does more than echo into space. It begins sculpting the architecture of your experience. Emotion is not just internal weather. It's instruction. It tells the quantum field who you are, what you expect, and what you're ready to receive. Dr. David R. Hawkins mapped this truth through decades of research. His scale of consciousness, a logarithmic chart ranging from shame to enlightenment, measures emotions in frequency, from the lowest vibrations of despair to the highest radiance of love and transcendence. According to Hawkins, guilt resonates around 30 Hz. Fear sits near 100. Anger rises to 150. Then comes courage at 200, the turning point where power begins. Gratitude, joy, and unconditional love soar past 500. Enlightenment nears 700 and beyond. This isn't opinion, it's data. And it explains why people stuck in the same circumstances can generate entirely different outcomes. They're not operating from the same signal. You've felt this intuitively. Think of the days when everything flows. Strangers smile, traffic parts, synchronicities appear without effort. And then think of the days when everything resists. People ignore you, delays multiply, nothing moves. The difference isn't the world, it's you. It's the emotional frequency you're sending, and whether the field around you can match it, amplify it, or push it back. Most people try to change their lives from the outside in. They rearrange their schedule, set new goals, change their diet, buy new crystals, read another book, repeat another affirmation. But the frequency remains unchanged, and so the signal remains unchanged. And so the field doesn't respond. Emotion is the fastest way to change your signal, but not the kind you fake, not the kind you force, the kind you generate by changing your relationship with yourself, with the present moment, with the story you're telling in your mind. Because your dominant emotion reveals your dominant belief, and your dominant belief reveals the shape of the future you're pulling toward you. Shame closes doors. It sends a signal of unworthiness, which creates a self-fulfilling loop. If I am not worthy of good, I cannot see good, I cannot feel good, I cannot receive good. Guilt vibrates only slightly higher, still tethered to the past, still chained to punishment. Anger begins to break the spell but lacks direction. It has fire but no clarity. It's only when you reach the vibrational threshold of acceptance, neutrality, and willingness that the field begins to shift in your favor. And when you enter the territory of love, appreciation, compassion, reverence, everything begins to organize differently. Doors appear where there were only walls. Solutions emerge before the problem fully forms. You don't need to force the puzzle. The pieces start coming to you. That's not magic. That's resonance. It's easy to misunderstand emotional frequency as a demand for positivity. But this is not about suppressing your sadness or pretending you're happy. High frequency isn't about being cheerful. It's about being coherent. Authenticity creates coherence. When you're honest about your pain, when you allow it to move without becoming it, you remain clear. The static leaves. The field receives your signal clearly. Even grief can be high frequency when it's honored, expressed, and allowed to pass. What blocks access isn't emotion. It's emotional dishonesty. It's spiritual bypassing. It's pretending you're peaceful when your body is trembling. It's faking confidence while your nervous system is in panic. That creates vibrational interference. One frequency in the body, another in the mind. And the field doesn't know how to respond to contradiction. Access opens when you become one signal. When your thoughts, emotions, and body agree on the reality you're ready to live. That's when you become powerful. That's when doors no longer need to be forced open. They swing wide at your arrival. If your life feels heavy, stalled, or closed, begin not by asking what you want, but by asking what you're broadcasting. What emotion lives in your chest when you wake up? What feeling rides underneath your words when you speak? What's the tone behind your thoughts when you think of the future? That's the signal shaping the reality you're about to walk into. You can begin to shift your signal gently. You don't have to leap to joy, but you can soften. You can reach for gratitude, even if it's for the breath you're taking. You can cultivate trust, even if you don't see the full path. You can begin to hold yourself in compassion, even when things don't make sense. And as you do, the frequency rises. Not because you're pretending, but because you're returning to alignment. Emotion is not weakness, it's guidance. It's data. It's a compass. And it's a key. Once you learn how to feel what's true without drowning in it, once you learn how to regulate your nervous system and direct your attention with love, you begin to unlock states of being where life opens for you. Not just once, but over and over again. Because the doors you're trying to open, they respond to your emotional vibration long before they respond to your physical action. Identity entanglement. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. Desire is not enough. You can want abundance, love, purpose, peace, and still repel it completely. Because the universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. Your identity, the energetic blueprint of how you see yourself and what you believe to be true about reality, acts like a gravitational field. And that field either draws your desired experiences toward you or keeps them infinitely out of reach. This is the most overlooked truth in the manifestation world. That wanting without being is the same as reaching for something while walking away from it. Wanting says it's not here yet. Wanting reinforces distance. It says I'm not that, not yet. And because your identity is still coded in lack, the field mirrors it back as absence. The more you chase it, the more it runs. The more you declare it's missing, the more missing it becomes. You can't fake identity. You can't trick the field. The quantum realm responds to coherence, and coherence only occurs when thought, emotion, action, and embodiment align. That's what shifts the signal. That's what opens the door. Your identity is the container for your frequency. You could raise your vibration temporarily with gratitude, movement, music, mantras. But if your core identity is still rooted in struggle, the elevated emotion collapses like a wave without ground. It rises, then it crashes, and nothing stays changed. This is why people relapse into old patterns even after breakthrough moments, because the inner self hasn't caught up. The nervous system hasn't accepted the new reality as safe. The old self is still running the show, clinging to the familiar pain, the predictable limitations, the story that keeps them small because small at least feels controllable. Identity is not about personality. It's about energetic signature. It's about the version of you you've decided to believe in. It's the baseline vibration that you wake up with and carry into every decision, every interaction, every moment of self-reflection. If you see yourself as someone who always struggles, you'll unconsciously reject ease. If you see yourself as someone who's not lovable, you'll find 1,000 subtle ways to push love away. If you see yourself as someone who has to earn everything through sacrifice, you'll sabotage anything that comes with grace. This is what's called identity entanglement, when your consciousness becomes quantumly linked with an outdated version of self. You're entangled with a frequency that no longer reflects your truth, but it's still running your life. You wake up each day and unknowingly react from the past, rehearse old emotional states, speak the language of old wounds, and wonder why the present keeps looking like the history you're trying to heal from. To disentangle, you must choose. Not later, not someday, but now. You must choose the frequency of your future self and wear it like a second skin, even if your environment hasn't caught up. You must think like them, breathe like them, speak like them, move like them, feel like them, until your cells forget the past and begin encoding a new reality from the inside out. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire based on repeated experience. And when your identity shifts, the wiring shifts. Your nervous system reorganizes. Your subconscious begins to expect the new. And suddenly, what once felt impossible begins to feel familiar. But here's the key: this identity shift doesn't begin when your external world changes. It begins in silence, indecision, in the moment you stop defining yourself by your memories and begin defining yourself by your intention. You stop saying, "I am the person who always," and you start saying, "I am becoming the one who," and that one subtle shift begins to collapse old timelines. Becoming isn't pretending, it's remembering. Your future self is not a fantasy, it's a frequency, and that frequency is already available in the quantum field. The version of you who lives in freedom, alignment, abundance, peace, they're real. They already exist, but they can't meet you where you are. You have to meet them where they are. And you do that by stepping into their vibration now. When you do, something miraculous happens. The field begins to reorganize around the new you. People respond differently. Opportunities appear. Resistance dissolves. But more than that, your own perception shifts. You stop looking for proof. You stop waiting for permission. You start living from inner authority. This is why identity is the deepest portal to manifestation. Because it's not about getting anything. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to get it. Because it's already yours. You've already become it. This is what alignment feels like, when your outer world begins to bow to your inner frequency. Not because you forced it, but because you are it. And the field had no choice but to respond. The frequency field. How to raise your vibration. naturally. Raising your vibration isn't a task. It's a return. Coming back into your natural frequency, the one you were born with, before the world taught you to doubt it. You don't raise your vibration by effort. You raise it by resonance. And the more you fight to elevate it, the more you confirm that you're below. That's the paradox. The fastest way to rise is to stop believing you're stuck. Your vibration is not a single emotion or fleeting thought. It's the accumulated signal of your inner state. Your breath, your posture, your emotions, your presence, your subconscious expectations about life. It's your default resonance. And the beautiful thing is, it's always moving, always modulating, always responding to your awareness. You don't have to force the change. You just have to interrupt the unconsciousness. The frequency you emit is being shaped moment by moment by what you focus on, how you interpret what's happening, and the level of presence you bring to now. When you're tense, distracted, worried, self-critical, your vibration contracts. The signal becomes noisy, unstable, confused. But when you pause, breathe, soften, and return to the center, the field begins to organize around coherence again. Coherence is clarity. Clarity is signal. Signal is reality. You don't need rituals to access this. You don't need hours of silence or perfect conditions. You only need to re-enter the current, and the current is always in the now. The most natural way to raise your vibration is through attention. Not the kind of attention that tries to fix or control, but the kind that sees, that witnesses without judgment, that allows what is to be without trying to escape it, because resistance lowers frequency. Presence raises it, and presence can only occur when you stop trying to get somewhere else. When you pay loving attention to what you feel, what you think, how your body moves, you begin to unwind the tension that holds you below your potential. You dissolve the contraction. You re-enter flow. The second is interpretation. Nothing has meaning until you give it meaning. And meaning is a vibrational force. The same event can either collapse your field or expand it, depending on the story you attach to it. You can call it a failure or a redirection. You can call it betrayal or protection. You can call it the end or the beginning. Your interpretation doesn't just change your emotion. It changes your access point to possibility. The universe doesn't decide what something means. You do. And every time you choose an empowering meaning, one that honors your growth, your path, your learning, you raise your frequency instantly. Not artificially, not through bypassing, but through creative authorship. You're not just a participant, you're a co-creator. Meaning-making is the sacred act of tuning your frequency to a new reality. The third pathway is regulation. Your nervous system is the instrument through which all vibration is processed. When your system is dysregulated, when you're anxious, hypervigilant, disconnected, frozen, your ability to access higher emotional states is compromised. You might know what you want to feel, but you can't embody it, because your system doesn't feel safe to let go. That's why real elevation begins with safety, with grounding, with creating a relationship with your body, where it knows it's not being punished, rushed, or shamed. Breathe slowly, move gently, touch your heart, speak kindly to yourself. These aren't spiritual cliches. They're biochemical gateways. They send messages to your body that say, it's okay to feel again. It's okay to soften. And that softness is what lets the light back in. Gratitude is one of the most powerful frequency-raising states, but not the forced kind, not the kind you write out like a checklist. Real gratitude, felt gratitude, the kind that swells in your chest when you realize something precious is here now. The breath, the moment, the miracle of being alive despite everything you've survived. That kind of gratitude reshapes the signal entirely. It brings the nervous system into coherence. The heart opens. The field responds. Joy is another portal. Not happiness, joy, the kind that can appear even in grief, the kind that surprises you in the middle of nothing, the kind that rises not because things are perfect, but because something in you remembers. Life is still beautiful. Joy raises your vibration because it doesn't need a reason. It just is. And the more you welcome it without guilt, the more it returns. And then there's movement, not to control your body but to liberate it. Movement raises frequency because it unsticks stagnant energy. It allows emotion to process, trauma to exit, truth to flow again. You don't have to dance like anyone's watching. You only need to move like you're listening. listening to your body's language, listening to what it's been trying to tell you under all the silence, and finally silence itself. Stillness is not empty. It's full. Full of intelligence, full of healing, full of realignment. When you sit in silence, not to escape but to connect, the noise begins to dissolve. And underneath the noise, your original frequency returns. The one you had before the conditioning, before the trauma, before the pressure to be someone else. That signal is still there, and the silence helps you hear it again. You don't need to manufacture your vibration. You only need to uncover it. And the moment you do, the world starts responding differently. Not because it changed, but because you became someone it could recognize. The void isn't empty, it's gestation. There comes a moment in every journey of transformation when everything goes silent. Nothing moves. The excitement fades. The synchronicities disappear. You begin to question if you ever had momentum at all. And in that space, that hollow, uncomfortable stillness, the mind panics. It tells you something is wrong, that you lost the magic, that your vibration must have dropped, that the manifestation is slipping away. But what if that silence is not a signal of failure, but a confirmation of progress? What if the void isn't absence, but gestation? Every reality worth living passes through a season of invisibility, a time when the frequency is shifting underneath the surface, but no evidence has arrived. Like seeds beneath the soil, your intentions are taking root, not in the external world, but in the structure of your being. And the void is the womb where this gestation unfolds. In quantum physics, this space is known as the zero-point field, a vacuum of apparent nothingness that's actually the most fertile and dynamic state in existence. It's where virtual particles blink in and out of existence. It's the field behind the field, and it holds infinite potential. But it can't be seen. It can't be forced. It can only be entered through stillness, through surrender, through trust. You've been taught to associate movement with progress, but at the quantum level, stillness often precedes the leap. The wave collapses into the particle only when consciousness locks in, and sometimes that consciousness needs to release all control before the reality can take form. This is why so many manifestations dissolve just before birth, not because they weren't working, but because the discomfort of the void triggered fear. The person pulled back, doubted, tried to fix it, tried to accelerate it, and in doing so they interrupted the gestation. You are not being tested in the void. You are being stabilized. You're being invited to anchor a new vibration without external confirmation. You're being asked to hold the frequency of what you want, in a space where nothing around you is validating it. That's not punishment. That's calibration. The field is waiting to see if your frequency is authentic or conditional. This is the sacred pause between intention and embodiment. It's the silence before the orchestra plays, the inhale before the arrow flies, the darkness before the light breaks. And while it can feel unbearable at times, it is one of the most intelligent stages of the creative process, because in the void, the old self is dissolving. But the new self has not yet materialized. You're not who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. And that gap is not failure, it's holy. It's the place where the deepest transformation is occurring, not in your schedule, not in your external results, but in your identity, your nervous system, your emotional baseline, your capacity to receive without clinging, your willingness to trust without proof. If you're in the void right now, the most powerful thing you can do is stop interpreting it as something wrong. What you label as delay may be divine sequencing. What you perceive as silence may be the space required for the signal to become clear. What feels like nothing may be the moment before everything shifts. The void is not where you wait passively, it's where you listen actively, where you begin to notice the subtle movements within, the small nudges, the reorganizing of desire, the recalibration of intention. Sometimes the manifestation can't arrive until you update what you're even asking for. When you surrender to the void, you begin to see it not as punishment, but as preparation, not as stuckness, but as sacred suspension. And in that surrender, you create coherence, not with what you want, but with who you're becoming. This is the moment where people either give up or quantum leap. And the difference is never circumstance. It's interpretation. It's whether they collapse back into fear or stabilize into trust. Trust that what they planted is growing. Trust that the frequency has been sent. Trust that the field is already organizing around it, silently, invisibly, intelligently. When you stop judging the void, it stops suffocating you. It becomes a space of breathing again, of regeneration, of energetic maturity. This is where the signal becomes unshakable. This is where your vibration no longer wavers every time results don't appear. This is where you become the type of person reality can trust, because reality does trust the ones who trust themselves. And nothing reveals your self-trust more than how you navigate the space where nothing seems to be happening. If you can hold the frequency in the silence, if you can embody the version of yourself that no longer waits, but lives as if it's done, you shorten the timeline. Not through force, but through faith, because the void responds to certainty. Not certainty of the outcome, but certainty of the self. You're not losing momentum. You're becoming still enough to receive it. Phase lock. How to synchronize with your desired timeline. There's a moment when everything begins to click. Not because the world changed, but because your internal frequency found resonance. You're no longer chasing. You're no longer convincing yourself. You're no longer trying to believe. Something deeper takes over. Something stabilizes. You feel yourself in alignment, not as a fleeting state, but as a new center of gravity. That moment is called phase lock, and it is the gateway between desire and embodiment. In physics, phase locking describes what happens when two systems vibrating at different frequencies gradually adjust to one another until they begin to move in harmony. They lock into rhythm. They cohere. This happens in nature all the time. Fireflies begin to flash in perfect synchronization. Heart cells begin to beat as one. Even pendulums on separate clocks will slowly start to swing together if placed on the same wall. This isn't coincidence. It's the law of resonance reaching critical stability. Now imagine that same principle applied to consciousness. You have a current frequency, shaped by your thoughts, emotions, habits, identity, and expectations. And there exists a future timeline, a version of your life where the doors are already open, where ease replaces resistance, where alignment has replaced effort. That timeline has its own frequency too, its own rhythm, its own vibrational structure. The only way to access it is not by forcing it to appear, but by synchronizing with it. Phase lock is the energetic moment when your current self aligns, fully, consistently, and cleanly, with the version of you already living the life you desire. It's when the gap between now and then disappears, when the resistance drops, when reality begins to bend around your being instead of your doing. Most people try to reach their new timeline through action. But action without synchronization is noise. It creates friction, confusion, feedback loops of self-doubt, because the timeline you want doesn't just require different actions, it requires a different rhythm. And until your energy pulses with that rhythm, the signal won't hold. To achieve phase lock, you must stop trying to get there and begin living from there. Not physically, energetically. What does that look like? It looks like letting your breath reflect the calm of someone who already feels supported. It looks like choosing thoughts that match the clarity of someone who knows who they are. It looks like feeling your way into the body posture, the tone of voice, the gaze, the self-talk of the version of you who lives inside that new timeline, not someday. But now phase lock doesn't begin with evidence. It begins with identity. Your frequency doesn't rise because life gets easier. Life gets easier because your frequency rose and finally stabilized long enough for the field to recognize you as a match. Most people destabilize before synchronization completes. They begin to align, they feel something shifting, but then they doubt it, test it, check for proof. That interruption causes a collapse of coherence. The two timelines drift apart again. The lock breaks. And the old feedback loop continues. To synchronize with your desired life, you must develop emotional stamina, the capacity to hold the frequency of your future self long enough for reality to shift around you. Not briefly, not only in meditation, not only when it's easy, but throughout the day, in traffic, in silence, in conflict, in uncertainty. That's when your vibration is being tested for consistency. The timeline you want is already real, but you're either tuning to it or tuning away from it. There's no in-between. Synchronization isn't passive. It requires attention, discipline, curiosity. It requires the courage to let go of the emotional patterns and identity loops that belong to the previous version of you. Because the rhythm of your new reality can't lock into a frequency that's still pulsing with fear, scarcity, or resentment. And it's not about perfection. It's about coherence. It's about holding a clean enough signal, a stable enough inner resonance, that the quantum field begins to entrain with you. That's the miracle. The field starts responding to your internal shift, not your external effort. This is why the people who live in flow, who seem to attract opportunities effortlessly, aren't lucky. They're entrained. They've reached phase lock. Their frequency has become so coherent with their desired state that the universe organizes around them without resistance. When that happens, doors open not because you demanded them to, but because you became the key. If you want to accelerate this process, ask yourself this: how would I breathe if I already lived in that version of my life? How would I walk? How would I speak? How would I feel? How would I respond to challenges? To joy? To waiting? Ask it not to pretend but to program. Ask it not to act but to activate. This is embodiment at the quantum level. This is how timelines collapse. Not through willpower, but through resonance reaching threshold. You don't step into your future life. You step into the version of you who already lives there. And when you do, the rhythm of that timeline pulls you forward. Naturally, magnetically, unstoppably. That's the power of synchronization. That's the precision of phase lock. And when it clicks, you'll know. Because things will begin to happen that feel too easy to be logical, too aligned to be random, too precise to be accidental. That's not magic. That's physics. Attention creates the timeline. What you look at expands what you give your attention to, gives you back a version of yourself. Every focus is a frequency. Every thought sustained is a tuning fork. You are not just observing reality. You are feeding it. You are sculpting it. You are collapsing one possibility into form, while 1,000 others dissolve into the unseen. This is not poetic abstraction. This is the mechanics of manifestation. Attention is not neutral. It's magnetic. It pulls potential into the visible. It activates dormant pathways. It opens doors you couldn't see a moment before. The moment you really look at a pattern, a belief, an opportunity, a version of yourself, you begin to energize it. That energy carries instructions. Instructions the quantum field cannot ignore. This is why two people can walk through the same situation and have radically different outcomes. One chooses to feed the fear. The other chooses to focus on expansion. One creates a feedback loop of collapse. The other creates momentum, not because the world changed, but because they looked at a different part of it. You're not trapped in your circumstances. You're entangled with your focus. And the more you obsess over what's missing, the more the signal of lack becomes your vibrational home. The more you monitor the delay, the more you embed the frequency of not yet. And when the universe listens, it doesn't hear your intentions. It hears your attention. This is why the most powerful shifts in reality often begin in silence, when you stop reacting and begin redirecting. When you pull your gaze from what isn't working and begin to attune to what is becoming. That doesn't mean denial. It means selection, conscious selection, because attention is not just awareness, it's allegiance. Think of the mind as a lens and the field as a spectrum of possibilities. The lens doesn't change the light itself, but it determines what you see. Zoom in on limitation and you'll find it. Zoom in on proof that things never work, and reality will show you 1,000 reasons why. But shift the lens, even slightly, and new data appears. New patterns, new openings. You weren't blocked. You were just staring at a wall and calling it the truth. Your attention is collapsing a timeline every time you choose what to focus on. And every choice you make, every narrative you reinforce, every belief you entertain, strengthens the energetic scaffolding of the timeline you're living. This is the deeper meaning of the phrase, what you focus on expands. It's not just about positivity. It's about frequency stability. It's about maintaining enough coherence in your perception that the quantum field begins to reorganize around the version of reality you've chosen to energize. And it is a choice, even when it doesn't feel like one. Especially when it doesn't feel like one. The trauma, the chaos, the uncertainty, they all have gravity. They all pull at your attention like magnets, but that's where your power lives. In the ability to feel their pull and still choose differently. To say, yes, this exists, but it's not where I'm building from. Yes, I see it, but I no longer feed it, You're not ignoring reality. You're generating a new one. The key is presence, true presence. Not just being here, but being with what's here, without judgment, without collapse. Because presence opens a gap between the stimulus and the story, between the moment and the meaning. And in that gap, you reclaim your frequency. When you catch your mind scanning for problems, interrupt it gently. When you notice your body tensing in anticipation of disappointment, pause and breathe. Ask yourself, what am I energizing right now? What am I making more real through my focus? Am I staring at the version of me that's shrinking or the version that's awakening? Choose wisely, not because you're being tested, but because you're being tuned. Attention is the steering wheel of your timeline, and wherever you place it consistently, life follows. The people, the opportunities, the ideas, the insights, they don't appear randomly. They appear through vibrational invitation. Your attention is the RSVP. That's why clarity is magnetic. When you become deliberate about what you see, what you amplify, and what you ignore, the universe stops sending you noise. It starts sending you matches. And when you commit, fully, unapologetically, to feeding only the signal that reflects who you're becoming, you begin to inhabit a different version of yourself. Not gradually, but immediately, not someday, but now. Because the shift doesn't happen when the world catches up. It happens the moment you realize that what you look at looks back. Your future self is guiding you from the other side of the door. What if that feeling you've been calling intuition is actually memory? What if the moments of knowing, the strange surges of clarity, the spontaneous ideas that seem to drop from nowhere, are not random gifts from the universe, but signals from a version of you who already walked through the door you're trying to open? You are not moving toward your future. You are tuning into it. In the quantum field, time is not linear. All versions of you, the one who is stuck, the one who is healing, the one who is expanding, and the one who has already manifested the life you're dreaming of, all coexist in the same field. They're not ahead of you. They're alongside you, separated not by distance but by frequency. This means that your future self is not a concept. It's a consciousness, a presence, a signal. And it's broadcasting, always trying to reach you, guiding you in moments that seem irrational, whispering through the pull to go left instead of right, nudging you towards silence when the world demands noise, calming you just before you choose fear. That voice you hear, the one that interrupts the spiral, the one that brings peace without reason, that's not fantasy. That's entanglement. Quantum entanglement shows us that two particles connected in space-time remain instantly responsive to each other, regardless of distance. They are in constant communication. You are entangled with your future self in exactly the same way. The only question is, are you still enough to hear the signal? That signal comes not through logic, but through resonance. It doesn't yell. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain itself. It simply pulses through your body as truth. Not the kind you can prove, the kind you recognize. That's why it's not intuition. It's remembering. Remembering the version of you who already made the choice, already opened the door, already stabilized in the frequency you're still trying to access. When you feel pulled towards something that doesn't make sense, that's your future self showing you a shortcut. When you meet someone and feel like you've known them forever, that's your timeline giving you context. When an opportunity appears with impossible timing, that's your expanded self rearranging the quantum chessboard on your behalf. But most people miss the signals. Not because they're not there, but because they dismiss them. They explain them away. They override the whisper with noise. They want logic. But the future doesn't speak logic. It speaks alignment. You won't be able to explain the choices that change your life. You'll just know, and that knowing will come with a sense of peace you didn't earn, clarity you didn't build, and timing you couldn't have planned. That's the voice of the version of you who already lives in the reality you desire, saying, "Come this way." This is not imagination. It's quantum communication, and the more you trust it, the louder it gets. The more you follow it, the more synchronized your reality becomes. You'll begin to see signs everywhere, not because they weren't there before, but because your perception is now tuned to a different signal. Your awareness is no longer scanning for threat. It's scanning for confirmation. This is how you collapse timelines, not by chasing your future, but by listening to the version of you who already lives there, and acting as if they're already you. How would your future self walk into this room? How would they answer this message? How would they respond to this setback, to this silence, to this doubt? Ask, and then become the answer. This is identity reprogramming at the quantum level, not with affirmations, but with attunement. It's also why the people who seem to leap ahead in life often can't explain how they did it. They'll say it was faith, intuition, gut instinct, a moment of clarity. What they're describing is phase lock, the moment when they stopped trying to figure it out and started following the version of themselves who already figured it out. And the more you listen to that self, the more you allow their confidence to replace your hesitation, their vision to replace your confusion, their certainty to calm your nervous system, the faster you merge with them. This isn't becoming someone else. It's becoming more fully who you've always been. That's what happens when you stop worshipping the future as a destination and start living it as a frequency. You feel less like you're striving and more like you're remembering, less like you're manifesting and more like you're aligning. And eventually the door that once felt so far away becomes the one you've already stepped through, because the version of you on the other side was never out of reach. They were just waiting for you to stop doubting the voice. That's been guiding you all along. Neuroplasticity of miracles. Rewiring the brain for receptivity miracles are not supernatural events. They are neurological patterns rehearsed in alignment. Most people think that a miracle is something rare, random, and divine, as if grace were a lightning bolt from an invisible sky. But what if a miracle is simply what happens when your brain and your energy field finally agree? What if it's not the universe that resists you, but your own conditioning? The brain is not a storage device. It's a filter. It doesn't show you reality. It shows you what matches your identity. Every day, billions of bits of information are filtered out because they don't align with your self-concept. So even if an opportunity, relationship, or blessing is right in front of you, you won't see it unless your mind has been trained to recognize it. This is where neuroplasticity becomes the gatekeeper of your timeline. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated experiences, emotions, and thoughts. And here's the secret most never learn. Your subconscious beliefs are not just ideas. They're neural architecture. They're literal physical circuits that fire and wire together every time you feel undeserving, afraid, or stuck. That's why affirmations alone don't work. That's why visualizations without emotion fade. Because the circuits responsible for change don't get activated by repetition. They get activated by coherence. When your thought, your feeling, and your energetic state are all aligned, the brain gets new instructions, and the field gets a new signal. This is where miracles begin. Not in the external world, but in the microscopic shift that happens when a belief dissolves, when an emotion is felt all the way through and released, when a new thought is not just entertained but embodied, when a pattern that kept you stuck loses its charge, and a new possibility begins to feel normal, safe, inevitable. The moment you do this, truly, fully, the brain rewires. The nervous system recalibrates, and you become biologically prepared for what was once only a fantasy. Joe Dispenza calls this firing and wiring, but it's more than biology. It's spiritual engineering, because the moment your neural patterns change, your vibrational signature changes. You no longer resonate with the timeline of struggle. You begin to match the frequency of the door that was always there, but hidden by your old programming. This is why real change feels so strange at first, because your body doesn't recognize it as safe. Your brain hasn't formed enough myelin, enough insulation around new circuits, to make it feel normal. That's why people sabotage their expansion. Not because they don't want more, but because more feels unfamiliar. And the brain loves the familiar, even if it's painful. To rewire your receptivity, you must stay in the frequency of unfamiliar peace long enough for it to feel like home. You must meditate not to escape, but to install. You must visualize not to fantasize, but to instruct. You must speak new truths into your nervous system not to convince it, but to reformat it. This takes consistency, but not the kind you were taught. Not effort, not willpower, but loving repetition, presence, curiosity, creating experiences, even micro-experiences, of the version of you who already receives easily. What does their body feel like? How do they breathe? What thoughts do they not entertain anymore? What's their emotional baseline? Safety, joy, expansion. The brain doesn't rewire through information. It rewires through experience. So every time you allow yourself to feel the version of you that receives with ease, you're laying down the tracks for a new identity. You're instructing your subconscious to stop scanning for danger and start scanning for alignment. This is the neuroplasticity of miracles. A miracle is not magic. It's what happens when the hardware of your brain stops fighting the software of your soul, and it's available. The moment you stop rehearsing limitation and begin rehearsing coherence, because you don't attract what you want. You attract what your nervous system is prepared to handle. And when your inner world becomes safe enough, stable enough, and coherent enough to receive, the external world doesn't resist, it responds. Reverse manifestation, doors open when you stop knocking. At some point on this path, you begin to understand a strange, almost paradoxical truth. The more desperately you knock, the less the door moves. The more intensely you chase what you desire, the more it seems to hide from you. The louder you scream for results, the more silent the universe becomes. And that's when something inside you breaks, not in pain but in realization. You never needed to force the door. You needed to remember you were the key. Reverse manifestation isn't about doing the opposite of everything you've learned. It's about unlearning the addiction to effort, the obsession with outcomes, the illusion that you're separate from the very thing you're trying to bring into your life. When you truly understand the laws that govern this reality, quantum, emotional and spiritual, you see it clearly. You never manifested from action. You manifested from being, from identity, from embodiment. And the more you try to do your way into a new frequency, the more you reinforce the old one. The one that says, I'm not there yet. The one that says, this isn't mine yet. The one that says, I need to fight for it. But there's a frequency that doesn't knock. It resides. It occupies. It breathes as if it already lives in the room you're trying to enter. This is not passivity. It's resonance. When you stop knocking, you're not giving up. You're tuning in. You're dissolving the false version of you that believed struggle was noble and surrender was weakness. You're walking away from the threshold of a door that was never locked, just waiting for you to remember that it opens inward. This is why so many manifestations arrive after you stop obsessing. After you stop needing them. After you let go, not with anger or resentment, but with peace. Because letting go is not the end of desire. It's the purification of it. It's when desire matures from craving to coherence, from lack to embodiment. You stop knocking not because you don't care, but because you finally understand that knocking is what's keeping the door shut. You've been vibrating as the one outside, and the universe, faithful to your frequency, mirrors that back perfectly. So you do something radical. You go silent. You stop explaining. You stop proving. You stop needing it to happen now in the way you've imagined. And instead you walk, you breathe, you smile, you rest. Not out of denial, but because you know something deeper, something sacred. That the more you soften, the more reality responds. This is not detachment in the cold, stoic sense. This is warmth, intimacy, intuition. You begin to feel the frequency of what you desire as if it's already in your field. You treat it as familiar, and the body follows. The breath slows. The mind quiets. The nervous system uncoils. And in that stillness, a door you forgot you were standing next to creaks open. Because manifestation in its highest form is not asking. It's remembering. The version of you who no longer knocks doesn't need to, because their identity is already inside the experience. Their presence carries the frequency. Their energy says, I belong here, and the world listens. When you stop knocking, your energy stops begging. It starts emanating. It starts shaping the field around you. It starts reordering the geometry of events, people, and possibilities. Not by force, but by magnetism. Magnetism is the language of reverse manifestation, and it only activates when you drop the need to convince anyone, including yourself, that you're worthy. You are worthy, not because you said the affirmation enough times, but because the truth doesn't require repetition to be real. It just requires acceptance. And once you accept that you are the frequency you've been chasing, you'll see it. The door won't need to be knocked on. It will simply respond, because all manifestation begins with identity. You don't receive what you run toward. You receive what you've become still enough to allow. And when the knocking stops, The noise fades, the struggle dissolves, and all that's left is silence. That's when you hear it, the soft click of the door unlocking, because you didn't force it open. You remembered you were already inside. You are the frequency that opens doors. You didn't just listen to a video. You lived a journey, a spiral of understanding, beginning with effort and ending in embodiment. You began as someone seeking the frequency that opens doors, and now you stand on the other side, realizing something far more powerful. The frequency isn't something to find. It's something to become. Every chapter you've walked through wasn't just information. It was recalibration, a remembering, a return to the inner alignment that has always been your true access point. There was never anything outside of you that held the power. Not a mantra, not a method, not a map. The most potent doorway was, and always will be, your state of being. And now you know, frequency isn't something you chase. It's something you stabilize. It's the way you breathe when you stop proving. It's the way your body feels when you drop resistance. It's the subtle shift when you stop begging and begin allowing. When you stop reaching for miracles and realize your very presence, grounded, coherent, receptive, is the miracle, and maybe now you feel it differently. The way life begins to soften around you when you become soft inside. The way opportunities find you when you stop grasping. The way silence becomes sacred when you're no longer afraid of it. And the way reality starts whispering, yes, when your energy no longer screams, please, this is the real secret. Not in the words you say, but in the energy you carry. Not in how well you visualize the door, but in how fully you embody the version of you who's already on the other side. And from this place, this new baseline, this deeper coherence, everything changes. Synchronicities don't feel surprising. They feel obvious. Breakthroughs don't feel miraculous. They feel natural. Alignment doesn't feel like a goal. It feels like a homecoming, because now you are no longer the one searching for the frequency. You are the signal. You are the coherence. You are the field. And that's why doors open before you knock. That's why answers arrive before you ask. That's why timelines collapse and opportunities appear not through force, but through fidelity to the truth of who you really are. So here's what you do now. Let this frequency settle into your breath. Let it echo in your chest. Let it move into your decisions. Let it become the default setting in the background of your life. Because the more you rest in this signal, the less you chase, and the less you chase, the more life reveals itself. You didn't just learn something today. You remembered something eternal. And if that remembering moved you, even a little, even in a quiet way, then honor it, speak it. Type one word in the comments that reflects your frequency now, your new signal, your receiving state. That word is more than a comment. It's a key. And if you want to stay inside this resonance, not just with me, but with yourself, subscribe. Let that be your signal to your future self that you are ready to stay coherent with this field. And if you know someone whose door is about to open, send this to them. They'll understand. Maybe not right away, but their frequency will. This wasn't just a video, this was a shift. And it's only just beginning, because now you are the frequency that opens doors.